You're listening to Sasquatch Syndicate.
911, what are you reporting?
We got someone or something crawling around out here.
Did you see what it was? Was it a person or an animal or?
I can't tell. All I know is that my central light came on and I just happened to glimpse and see this thing running across the yard.
And all the ape believers don't want any of the paranormal believers to say anything because they're all whacked and screwed up and we don't want them. And all the paranormal believers don't want to go to the ape believers saying, well, you're all closed-minded. You're not open to the fact that it does this and it does that.
And I look over my left shoulder and this creature is running through the woods and it's bulldozing the brush down. And I knew, man, this thing is going to get me.
Welcome to Sasquatch Syndicate. I'm your host, Chuck, out in Seattle, Washington, along with Paul in Portland, Oregon. Thanks to everyone for listening and those following us at SasquatchSyndicate.com and on our social media outlets. For those participating in the Sasquatch Syndicate monthly t-shirt giveaway, this month's winner was Elizabeth Jackson from Conway, Arkansas. So Elizabeth, thanks for listening to the show, and please check your Facebook for winner notification. Happy October, everyone. We hope you're having an amazing fall and are ready for the Halloween festivities ahead. Sorry the team was a little bit delayed casting this episode, but we had an amazing opportunity we just could not pass up. And while we sincerely apologize for the brief delay, you won't be disappointed as something new and exciting is in the works. Just a few announcements, and as a reminder, Sasquatch Syndicate will be appearing with the cast and stars of Ancient Aliens at AlienCon Baltimore. AlienCon will be held November 8th through 11th at the Baltimore Convention Center in Baltimore, Maryland. All the event and ticket details can be found at thealiencon.com. So on to this month's podcast. With us tonight on Sasquatch Syndicate, we're joined by Louise from Arizona. Louise had an encounter with UFOs and Sasquatch back in the 1970s when she lived in the state of Florida. So Louise, welcome to Sasquatch Syndicate. And if you wouldn't mind, perhaps you can start from the beginning.
Well, for me, first of all, I just want to let you know that I had become a professional psychic. And by that, I mean, instead of doing readings in my home, I went out in the public for some reason. I was like kind of geared to do that. So I had my own little place and my followers went there. But in the past few years, that disappeared. I closed down my business and things changed. So I just wanted to let you know if that has any bearing on this. So I'm going to start with very young time. I had my experiences at a very young age, and I just didn't know what to make of it. 4 years old, and I'm looking at an apparition, and the apparition looks very gorgeous. It's an angel. Next time, I don't know how much longer, maybe a couple of weeks, it's something else, comes into my room. Okay, so those are the beginnings when I started to realize besides human beings, there's other things. And then as I got older, I had seen things in the sky flashing around, and I thought, okay, that's an unusual looking plane there, that I don't know what that is, and so I was growing into this gradually, and there's nothing I could do about it. But the biggest event I'd like to say is going face to face practically with Bigfoot. I call him Bigfoot because the thing I was looking at and experienced was big. He was big. Sasquatch is almost like a gentle name. This thing is big. And I was married at the time, and I had 2 children. And reflecting on all the experiences that I've had, this had to be the turning point where I realized, this could be dangerous. Not just being kind of unlucky and coming face to face with this thing, but everything seemed to come into like a picture. It's why am I being picked out and seeing these things and experiencing such strangeness? Why? Why is that? And I used to talk to God and say, God, why do I have to go through this? Why do I have to be subjected to seeing such strange things and experiencing strange things? But getting back to Bigfoot, that was pivotal, because then I realized these things can be arm's length. They can touch you. They can do what they, if they feel like they got to do things, they're right there. So in Florida, this is where it happened, in Florida, in a place called Pine Island Ridge. And at that time, back in the early 70s, it was not very populated. And I was right off an area called Alligator Alley. Now they call it State Road 441, and also that school that got hit with the terrorism not too long ago, it was literally like 4 miles down from where I had this experience with Bigfoot. I don't know why, but it just seemed to be something I have to say about that. And I had seen the largest UFO ever. This was huge. I had seen it right in that general area. It had to be about 2 football fields at least, and it was above our heads. But I didn't know what to make of it. I honestly didn't. But in Pine Island Ridge in 1973, I had just moved into a condo townhome. It was a townhome. It was upstairs, downstairs. It was 2 stories. It was in a cul-de-sac. It was by water, like a canal, but beautiful. And it was a very unusual location because right across from me was the ridge. And many years ago, they used to have monuments there indicating what fort it was and who was there and why they were there to fight off the Indians and things like that. I didn't even know they existed, to tell you the truth. I didn't read about it in history because Florida is generally flat. If you want to see anything with hills or elevation, it's usually somewhere north, starting with Tallahassee. My children were young. I had a 5.5-year-old, have some playtime. They had it was a brand new development. They had put a playground up on top. I had bicycle for the 5.5-year-old. I had a basket of food, which I made peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, drinks, and my purse, and extra things for the 1.5-year-old, and we went up. So I sat at the picnic table, started to get things prepared, and I'm just enjoying it. It was just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And the little 1.5-year-old managed to find himself on the slide. So he climbed up the slide. It was a very tall slide, which kind of made me nervous. But he was advanced. He was a very advanced child. He could walk by the time he was 8 months old. He talked by the time he was 10 months old. And he was very advanced, which was very shocking to me because I've never seen that before. So he was up there sitting on the slide, having fun, went down once or twice, got up on the top again. When we started to hear something, and it was pounding and pounding, and we could hear like brush breaking, branches breaking, and I thought, oh, this is not good. It's getting closer to us. It's coming up the ridge on the other side. And then I started to smell something, and I thought, wow, this smells really bad. This is nasty. And then when it screamed out, there was some sort of guttural screaming out. The thing just yelled out something. And when it did that, we all froze. All 3 of us just froze. I froze at the picnic table. The 5.5-year-old is frozen in his spot, whatever he was doing. And the 1.5 is stuck on the top of the slide. He turns around and looks at me. His eyes are 3 inches wide. And he's scared to death. what is that? So I said, this is no good. This is not good at all. I ran up there, got him down, got the other one, and we just ran. We left everything, my purse, the food, everything, toys, bicycles. We just ran because it came over the ridge and was coming after us. I didn't look back. I didn't want to look back. I was afraid of losing my footing through the brush. So I just kept running. I had the baby in one arm and my son by the hand in the other. And I'm running and finally get to my cul-de-sac. And in those days, we didn't lock doors. So I ran right through my front door, locked the door, turned around and to look out the window, and I couldn't see anything. And I was afraid to, frankly, but I didn't see anything. So that night, my husband had been on a business trip. He was out. I was alone with the children, and it came back to my house.
Louise, being alone and when you first entered your home, were you able to refortify the doors with barricades?
I had a metal door, a very thick iron metal door, front door, and it started to bang on the door. And it was making some sort of guttural sound, like it wasn't as high-pitched as it was on the ridge, but it was, I don't know, I can't describe it. It's ugly. And it was banging, and it was getting very frustrated and banging. And I thought, oh, my God. It was about 1:45, almost 2 in the morning when this happened. I'm all alone. And the only thing I had was my husband's military rifle. And I never, ever in my life thought I would be using this thing. I thought he kept it as like some sort of memento. But he did manage to show me how to use it just loosely, okay? He showed me how to use it. And I thought, I'll never use this thing. First of all, it's a very big and heavy gun, rifle. So I said, my God, what am I going to do? This thing goes around my house. I was the corner end of the townhouses, goes around, and it's all glass back there. I had glass dining room and glass patio doors. And I thought, we're done. This thing is going to break the glass and come in, and I don't know what the heck it's going to do. So I went, got my husband's rifle, and just standing at the top of the stairs because he came back at the door and was banging again. And I thought, okay, come in, and I'm going to aim right at your head, and I'm just going to keep shooting until your head is in all different places because you're not coming up here while my children are sleeping. I'm in the dark. Pitch dark. I didn't put any lights on. I was terrified. I'm just aiming this rifle right at this thing if it came in. So after what seemed to be such a long time, but it probably wasn't, maybe 5 minutes, 8 minutes, and I'm standing there at the top of the stairs in the dark with this rifle, and this thing is banging at my door, it stops. Literally just stops. And I was afraid to move. I didn't know if he had gotten in. Maybe I didn't hear him come in. I don't know. Maybe did he go through the glass? I don't know. So I just waited there at the top of the stairs, frozen. And then finally decided I'm going to turn on the lights now. I'm going to go downstairs slowly and see what's going on. Nothing. I didn't open the front door at all. I checked my back glass doors. They were fine. And that was that night. So the next day I called the police and I said, please help me. I said, this is what happened. And I explained it to them. I don't know. I think in those days they were the state troopers. And so I called them, and when I explained to him what happened, I said, please send a car out. I said, people out. I said, I need my purse. I said, my kids' toys. I said, everything is up there. He said, hey, look, lady, we're not doing that. He said, I'm not sending anybody out. He says, I know exactly what you're talking about. He says, because my officers he says, my men were out there on State Road 441, Alligator Alley. He said, and they encountered it only a week ago. He said it came across the road, stopped in front of their car, and started banging on the front end of the car, the police car. It did some damage, too. So they just stood there. They didn't get out of the car. They just stood there. So after, it was very angry, and it left. Crossed the road, left after it damaged the car. He says, I'm not sending my men out there. That's it. He says, I'm sorry. That's it. And he apologized. So I had to wait until my husband came home. And when he finally did, I told him the story. I says, this is what happened. I says, you can go check the front door. I says, it's brand new. He checks the front door. He says, it's brand new. What happened? I says, I had to change the door. I says, that thing completely damaged the door. I said, it pounded. You could see like the tears on it, those scratches. And the pounding left dents, huge dents, and his marks on there. I said, I can't live like that. It's a brand new house. I says, people are going to think you did it. So he says, okay. So the guy that came out to change the doors said to me, hey, lady, he says, what happened here? And I told him that I think it might have been, at that time we had wildcats like panthers and lynx. Florida was known for its lynx. Mm-hmm. Those are great, big, strong cats, let me tell you. And now I think they're extinct. So he said, really? He says, he didn't believe me. And I didn't know what to tell him because I really had not seen this thing yet. So he took it down. He took it with him. He put up the new door. And my husband then went, the next day to get all our things up at the ridge. He went up there with his baseball bat and my 5.5-year-old, and they accumulated everything. And my 5.5-year-old said something very curious. He says, Mommy, they didn't eat the peanut butter sandwiches. He says, all the food was still there. I said, well, maybe they don't eat peanut butter sandwiches and fruit. I said, maybe they eat something else. So they brought everything back, and I called a friend of mine that I'd known for a little while, and her husband was a fireman in Davie, Florida. And she told him the story. He called me. He said to me, I just want to let you know we had an experience with this creature. They had a ranch as well in Davie. At that time, there were a lot of ranches in Davie. And he said it had ripped off one of my horse's heads, killed my dog. He says, and I'm really pissed off. He says, and you were right there when this thing came at you? I said, yeah, but I didn't turn around to look at it. I said, I was terrified. All I wanted to do was run. I just kept running with my children. He says, okay. He says, I'm going to call National Geographic and have them come out and check. Son of a gun. They came out. They called me the next day, and they came out. They introduced themselves, and I told them where to look. Now, this is where I think communication broke down a little bit. I said, it's right there. I pointed to the ridge in where it's more dense. You see where all that forestry is and brush. I said, that's where we were. That's where this thing came up from the other side. And there is a ranch on the other side.
So, Louise, after you told them where to go, did they take your advice?
They didn't go in that direction. They went into more of an open forest area that was leveled, and they kept walking and walking. I didn't understand why they did that, but they were gone for at least an hour, came back and said, we didn't find anything. We thought we saw some impressions in the ground. He said, but not enough to make us take a cast of it. I said, oh, my God, that's so strange. How strange is that? But they never went to the crest where I had told them the thing had been. I felt kind of bad about that because it made me look like I was imagining this thing, and I felt bad that they were disappointed as well. So we let it go. Sometime after that, I was awakened. It might have happened around 2 months later, 3 months later, about 3 months later. I had become pregnant again. I had my third conception. And I was fixing the nursery. I was real proud of it. I made it the front room of upstairs. It was a beautiful view of the ridge across the way. I said, oh, this child is going to have the best view ever. Well, during the night, again, my husband was gone, and something woke me up, just woke me up. I sat straight up in bed, got up, and walked like I was a zombie or something. I'm listening to a command is what I was doing. And I walked down the hall to the front room, opened the window curtains, and saw this bright object very low on the horizon, actually very low over the ridge. And I had a perfect view of the ridge. And it shot across like a firecracker, with all kinds of bright tails. And it got really low, and it hit that far end where all the denseness was. And then it really exploded high. I mean, there was everything going off there. It looked just like one of those fireworks, but it was huge, very huge. And it hit it. I said, oh, my God. And then I stood there. It's like I was under command. And I'm thinking, oh, my God, I can't move. And then I turned around, walked down the hall again, and I got to the top of the stairs, and something said, come down, come over here, come to us. So I said, oh, I don't know if that's such a good idea. So I started to walk down the stairs, and I thought, wait a minute, halfway down, it's like 1 or 2 in the morning. Why am I doing this? Am I crazy? I'm going out there and go through the brush in the dark to something that's telling me to go over there? No way. So I turned around, fought my way back, literally. I had to just say, no, no, no. Got back into my room, and that was it. The strangeness after that was pretty bad after that. I had experiences that were just quite awful. After the last child was born, that was the child, was a boy, a very large baby, over 10 pounds. I'm looking out the back patio, and they had started building 6-story to 10-story condominium buildings. And we were fortunate. We got the townhouses, the 2-story townhouses. But they were in frame stage, and I noticed something odd every morning. There would be this black thing climbing I would catch it as it was halfway up on the framing, metal framing, and then start climbing up to the top. And I'm thinking, oh, my God, that man is out of his mind. So I called the security. We had a security gate, and I called them. I said, hey, there's some guy over there climbing the frame of the condo going up. He said, what? I said, yes. Go out there, send somebody. So he does. He sent somebody out to go look, and they call me back. They call me back after a long time. I don't know how long, maybe 40 minutes. And he says, that was not a man. I said, well, what was it? He says, I don't know. He says, it's a thing. He says, it's a creature. He says, and my employee quit. He says, I'm not sending anybody anymore out there. And he hung up. It happened again a couple of days later. I called him back. I says, it's back again. I says, well, call the police, do something. I says, you can't have that thing up there. Because I was worried about people that used to walk around those areas. It still was being built in an orange grove. That used to be sun-kissed orange grove at one time. I says, there's people that I know of, like my friends, that pick oranges over there. He says, I'm not sending anybody. I can't afford to lose employees. I'm not going to do it. So there I am. I'm looking for days on end, this thing climbing until they finally, started to put up the sides. And then this thing, but that one was black. Now I'm going to tell you that then my house seemed to be the house all of the kids in the neighborhood like to congregate. So after school, about 3:30, when they got off the bus at by 3:30, 3:45, they were all there with their bicycles and chasing each other all in front of my house. It was like a cul-de-sac as well. And they liked it because there was the ridge there, and it was a beautiful backdrop. So I'm out there watching them, and then suddenly my eyes went up, and there's this creature looking at me on the ridge. It was gray. He had an oval-shaped head, very high. I would say almost cone-shaped. From my perspective, that distance, it looked like from where I was and it had to be easily 9 feet to be conservative. 9 feet. He was gray all over his body. The strangest thing was his eyes. I could clearly see that they were oval as well, like up and down oval. Huge. I couldn't see pupils, maybe because I was too far away, but they looked all black. And I'm looking at this thing, and I says, oh, my God, please don't look at these children. And I'm praying that the children don't see it. I don't want these kids to see it. And I don't want it to notice the kids, but it wasn't interested in the kids. It was interested in me. So I'm looking at it, and then I said, okay, I'm thinking to myself, I'm going back in the house. I'm going to go get my rifle, my husband's rifle, and I'm just going to point it at it, and maybe that'll scare it away. Because I have to protect the kids. Just as I get to the door, it talks to me, and I realize, oh, my God, this thing is talking to me in my head. So it's telepathic. And I'm telepathic, I found out through that incident. And it says, come here, come with me. Come here, I want you here. I said, I'm thinking to myself, what the heck am I going to? We're not the same species. You're a different species. I'm a different species. You go away. Go away. I'm not your species. Go away. You know that thing did? It turned around, and as it's leaving, this is the strange part. It took like a couple of strides, and I don't know, maybe did I look away or something? The next thing I know, it disappeared. It disappeared. So I thought, this is the strangest thing ever. How could it be standing there in front of me? The kids never noticed it, thank God, because they're too busy running after each other and having a good time. But I was terrified. And here I am, oh no, I'm alone again. My husband's on a business trip. So, that's part of what was going on in Florida at that time. We had a lot of sightings of UFOs. Mine was kind of horrible because of this Bigfoot incident. That's as close as I got to what they call Sasquatch, Bigfoot. That was my experience with this thing.
Louise, going back to the craft when it first appeared, can you kind of describe, what you saw in terms of the spacecraft itself and really what that looked like?
Now, I have seen 3 significant ones that, first of all, with 2 of them, I had witnesses. So it wasn't my imagination and it wasn't mass hallucination. The one I spoke to you about that was at least 2 football fields was crescent-shaped. It was crescent-shaped. And it was glowing a type of orange, very deep, bright orange, and it vibrated. And my husband and I had moved from, this is where it happened. We had moved further away from Pine Island by the ridge, and we got ourselves, again, strangely, this development was not far from State Road 441 in a beautiful lakeside community, just gorgeous. We were out that night. We just went out the door after dinner, and the kids were in their rooms, and so we decided to take a walk, but we didn't get very far. We opened the door, walked maybe to the street, middle of the street. It was a cul-de-sac, and it was on a quarter of an acre, this house, my house. And we looked up because there was some sort of vibration or sound, and there it was over our heads, and we could see it. It was a rooftop level. It was crescent-shaped, and it was going very, very slow, which was kind of freaky. It was very slow, and it was going towards State Road 441. Because I watched it. My husband chickened out. He said, I'm going back in the house. I said, no, I got to see this. So he ran back in the house, and I'm watching this thing go all the way down over the lake and towards over 441, cross 441, not too far down, when it did a strange thing. It turned up on its side, stood there for a second, and then slid down into the swamp, because that's what it was at that time. It slid down into the swamp sideways, solidly. This gigantic UFO goes into the swamp sideways, you know, the full length, which was very, very large. And I thought, oh my God, how's that possible? The ground open up? What's down there but swamp and alligators and just a lot of swampy foliage and things. So I was like in awe of this. I still see it, and for some reason, this thing still stays in my head. And I had a friend that I talked to about, you know, these experiences I've had, and she says, you know, by the way, there's someone who's going to be speaking at, I think it was a college, a local college, and they're going to be talking about UFOs and asking for experiences. I said, oh, she says, Louise, you got to go. You got to go. She says, you got to talk about it. She says, you've had too many things happen to you. So I went. We went that night. And the guy was very interested in knowing what everybody's story was. When I got up and told him about this orange thing, he went like, okay, come here. So he had this pad, I don't know, pad, I guess, great big pad. And he says, I want coordinates. First of all, I don't know what he's talking about. He says, was it northwest, southwest? What is the coordinates on this? I said, I have no clue. He was a little upset. He was like very short with me. And I thought, oh, there must be a reason why this man is out here asking us these questions. So he says, describe it for me again. And what direction, at what point did you see it, and where did it go, and how fast do you think it was going? What was the speed? And then when did it turn sideways and go down? And, you know, he kept drilling me and drilling me. I thought that was very unusual. So I did the best I could and said, I'm sorry, I can't give you coordinates. All I can give you is the location in the direction it went. I said, that's it. That's all I can give you. So he did write it all down. He took my name and everything like that. Anybody that had any higher experiences, he took down names and phone numbers and then wrote down notes.
Louise, you mentioned that you had actually seen more than one craft on more than one occasion. Can you talk a little bit about some of those as well?
The other one, which happened way before that one, was in a place called Sunrise, Florida, which is south of Fort Lauderdale. And my neighbors and I were very friendly. We were having a little party over at my house. And it was 10:15 at night. And my next door neighbor says, oh, come with me, Louise. She says, I want to pick up some things and bring them over to your house. I said, okay. So we went out. I went to her house. She got her stuff. As she came out and we got onto the path to get to my house, there's a very unusually shaped UFO. It hovered over the street about 7 houses down. It was diamond-shaped. It looked like two upside-down pyramids. But it had sides to it, like a pyramid with like four sides. So, like that, one on top, one on the bottom, they were connected. And each panel seemed to have a different color, and they would rotate these colors, and not in sequence with the bottom one. And it was slowly, it seemed to have, I want to call it a sensitivity. So as it got closer to the houses it was interested in, that's what I got. That's what I was picking up. As it got closer to the houses across the street that it was interested in, the colors would change on the bottom and vibrate, and then the top ones would go in another direction. The colors were changing and all of that. And I thought, it reminds me of like a Christmas tree or a Christmas ornament lit up 10 times over. And it got closer to one of my friends' homes who had two boys. And I thought, oh, that's terrible. What is it doing stopping there? She was petrified. She was frozen. And I'm talking about a very big German girl at that time. She was huge. She was at least clearly almost 6 feet herself. I'm only 5'3", and she froze. Oh, my God, what is that thing? She couldn't move her body. I don't know. I'm going there because I don't think that's – and then I stopped in my tracks because then it picked up on me, and it was like a top on the street, like you would do a top, and it was – I'm not sure if it was touching the asphalt, but it was on the street, and it was coming at me. She ran into my house. I'm going to get the guys. She ran into the house to get help. And by the time they all came out, this thing was already on the tip tops of the houses on my side, but 2 or 3 houses down. So we all followed it. You know, we went out in the backyard, we're looking at this thing, and then it disappeared. Boom. Just like that. It just disappeared. But it gave me the creeps because it didn't seem like it was a friendly sort. I mean, I didn't know what kind of energy it was giving off. It was not normal energy that I could feel very comfortable with.
Right.
I didn't feel like this was something that I should welcome, or I was just curious. You know, what are you doing here, and why are you stopping at my friend's house with 2 boys in it? And then it came at me. Now, from time to time, living in Arizona, I've always lived by mountains. As a matter of fact, this area I'm in now that I moved in a couple of months ago is called Pyramid Peak. Behind me is a few pyramid-shaped mountains. I don't know if it's a coincidence or what. I'm waiting for something. That's what I feel like. I'm waiting for something.
Louise, if you could just kind of go back with our audience, and can you describe exactly what you saw when you looked at the creature? And I know that, you know, oftentimes people that have these encounters are in shock and they don't get a good glimpse of exactly what they're seeing. But did you have a chance to really take a good look at it?
I did get to observe it pretty well. I did. I would say it was a little more than short-haired, a little more, not shaggy like the black one that was climbing up at the condo. This one was short-haired to higher, you know, just enough, and it was covered completely. There was no other breaks in it, like the chest. It did have different colored hands, though. The back of the hands were slightly different, and I thought that was unusual. I got a good look as much as I could. His head got my attention because it was cone-shaped, and it was from the top of his eyes to the tip of his skull. I'm going to call it a skull. I would say it was fairly good distance. It was a good distance that if I was there close, it would probably be maybe close to 18 inches, 16 to 18 inches high. And his oval eyes, there was no brows. I could not see a nose. I did not see any nose, but that could be because it was covered with hair or short hair. I discerned what looked like a mouse, but it didn't move. It seemed to be more like a slit. And I don't remember seeing ears. I don't recall that. It might have been, but I don't recall that. And his ability for telepathy was quite strong. I mean, this is how this thing communicated. And in telepathy, what happens is no matter what language you're talking, we can understand each other because something gets translated in that part of the brain, which is the right brain, which is the spiritual brain, and it gets translated. I mean, I didn't know that until that point. This thing is talking to me. So I'm going to talk back. And I'm going to tell him and explain to him that he's a different species. You're different. I'm different. Go away. So that I said a few times, and he did. But then a couple of strides, and this thing disappears. So I said, did it fall through the ground? Did it climb a tree? What was it?
Louise, did you ever go back to see if it had left any tracks or footprint evidence?
Oh, speaking of that, I'm glad you brought that up. An unusual thing happened. I didn't want to look back when I was running from this thing with my babies. I felt I would trip and fall, and I couldn't afford that. So I went back the next day to see if I could find the courage to go get my stuff, okay? And it didn't happen. I got to a tree that was not too far away up the ridge, fairly close to the street, and I saw strange markings on the ground. And they were like hoof. It was bipedal. And then it was up the tree. And I said, nothing human is shaped with 3 claws or toes and then up a tree. Nothing human. And I don't know any cat that does that. This was clearly bipedal because I could see the tracks from maybe 5, 6 feet. It was 6 feet away. And it walked or ran and then went up a tree. So I don't know if that was a coincidence. I don't know if I should put that together. It just seemed very strange. So whatever is carrying these things, and I do feel that's what it's doing. I mean, that's how they get here. They're either carried. I mean, how else can they get here? And why did this crescent-shaped thing have the ability, or how did it have the ability, to just flip up on its side, stand there a second, and then slowly go into the ground or the swamps? That's my experience with it. It's very strange. It's hard to find answers. It took years and years and years to go over these things and realize what else is there connected to this? What?
Louise, can you just kind of take us back to the state of Florida? And when did these occurrences actually start to happen? Had you lived there your whole life? And was there a break in the action since you've moved out to Arizona?
It got there, well, when we first got to Florida, it was a transfer from his company, so we lived in an apartment. The strangeness started to happen in our very first home, which was in South Florida, in a place called Perrine. It's just north of Homestead Air Force Base, where those planes had disappeared back in 1944 or 45. Mm-hmm. There was a whole squadron of fighter jets doing an exercise, and they disappeared.
Yeah, Flight 19. Flight 19, and you know what else is in Homestead, Florida, is where Ed Leeds-Scowen built Coral Castle, and there's a lot of ley lines through there.
Yes, there is, and we used to pass it every day. It was clearly in our neighborhood, and I couldn't bring myself to go into that exhibit. It was, I'm embarrassed to say, I couldn't step foot in it. I could not. And as my one son, I only had one there, he would want to go. Come on, let's go, I said, no, not Danny, I cannot do it. Nope, we're not going in there. I don't think it's safe for us. I could not bring myself to go into that exhibit, and I'd pass it all the time. Go shopping. There was a mall down the street, and I couldn't do it. then I knew something was happening. There was a lot of strangeness. We sold the house. It was terribly haunted. It got overly haunted. I couldn't invite people anymore. It was just terrifying. There was one experience I can't tell you about because it's just too unbelievable. It would be too unbelievable. So I said, okay, we're selling the house. We're getting out of here. We sold the house. We went up to Fort Lauderdale. Pine Island was just on the outside of that, so that's where we ended up. It was just down the street from the main part of Fort Lauderdale. Then we moved on the Sunrise, and then we moved up to everywhere we went. I was stalked by strangeness. That's all I can tell you. It is the only way I can explain it. When I lived in Lake Worth, which is where I saw that orange disc that was crescent-shaped, it was very bad because I knew my son, who was the youngest, had been abducted by them. I knew it. And I would be like a watchdog. I had another son, by the way, that got abducted here in Phoenix when we first moved in. He doesn't want to talk about it. It would be very hard for him to talk about it. He gets mad at me. But it was a horror, just a horror. He was a newspaper boy, and we just moved into the house, and he wanted some extra money. He wanted to do newspaper route. I didn't care for it because he had to get up too early in the morning and then go to school. So one time he went out there, he came right back. He says, Mom, there's a thing down the street just hanging there. He says, like you talk about the UFOs? He says, it's right there down the street. I'm not going. He says, could you deliver them for me? I said, yeah, sure I will. So I went out. I didn't see it, so I finished the route for him. However, the next day, he didn't come back. So I had to call the school, and I thought, okay, if he's not back by 9 o'clock, I'm going to call the police because then I know we got a real problem on our hands. So I waited, and right about just before 9 o'clock, he came in. He came in through the front door instead of the garage where he would bring his bicycle and his baskets, that had the newspapers in them. He had the newspaper still in there. His face was completely burnt, blistered burnt, and he was sick, and he could barely walk, and I grabbed him at the doorway. I said, Greg, what happened? What happened? He says, I can't talk. He says, I'm sick. I got to throw up. So I walked him upstairs, literally carried him to his bedroom, laid him down, and he was that kind of kid that always worried about his grades. He was very unusually high IQ. And he said, did you call the school? Call the school. Tell them I'll be there tomorrow. I said, I did that already. I said, don't worry about it. You just lay there. I gave him ice packs. I didn't know what to do with him. Later, I find out from other experiencers on television, that's radiation burn. That's a burn. And I don't know how far it went in his body because I didn't look. I just didn't look. I didn't open up his shirt, his T-shirt, or anything. He just laid there. That's a horrific experience. Now you've got me going back and back and back into these horrible experiences. In Lake Worth, where the crescent-shaped one was, that's where I've been abducted so many times. And I know I saw one of my children up in a ship or wherever they took me. And it was a girl, and it was a female. It was female. It looked exactly like my son Greg, the one with the high IQ that was abducted. And she had big, giant eyes, which kind of threw me. And she could have been she was very healthy looking and stared at me very much knowingly, almost like she knew I was her mother. And I couldn't bear it. I just cried and cried and cried. It was not fun being me at that time. I'm still, I want to say, in a different way being stalked, but I protect myself now as much as I can now that I know better of what I'm dealing with. If you don't know what you're dealing with, It's just like a stumbling victim. But if you know what you're dealing with, and I talk to my God, and I talk to our God and ask for protection, and get tough with them. At night I say my prayers of protection, and say, hey, if you abduct me, I will make sure I grab hold of your controls, and we're going to go down, and they're going to find you. And that seems to keep them at bay, I think. It seems to keep them at bay.
I was going to say that's probably really good advice, for others out there with the same kind of experiences as well.
Yeah, don't be like weak and say, oh, my God, I can't help myself. Yes, you can, because they're real too. And if they're real, they can get hurt, they can get killed, they can get injured, and they feel fear as well. I don't care what it is, gray ET, green ET, black ET, or strange figure from other dimensions, and I've seen quite a few of them. They've got things to worry about themselves too in bodily harm. You've got to be tough. You can't show them that you're an easy victim. Don't be a victim. I taught that many times. I used to hold classes in my store, and I made sure these people understood that, if you're walking down the street in a lonely alleyway, you want to avoid it, but if you have to walk through that alleyway and there's somebody coming at you, you're going to have to protect yourself. And you don't start screaming and crying. Scream and jump on the person first, or tackle them. First of all, I had taken many classes on self-protection. And I tell them to do the same thing. You do that. Learn how to protect yourself, because you're going to need it at some point in this life. And even if it comes from another place, don't be frightened to the point where you can't defend yourself. You just think about how you're going to protect yourself.
Well said. Well, Louise, thank you again for coming on Sasquatch Syndicate. We certainly appreciate it. I know our listeners do as well. As a reminder, if you've had an encounter or you'd like to be a guest on our show, you can reach us at SasquatchSyndicate.com and click Contact. So once again, Louise, we wish you all the best in Arizona, and we really appreciate you coming on Sasquatch Syndicate.
Oh, I really appreciate, Chuck, for having me on this show. It was a great chance to finally say what had happened to me, and I'm sure others have had the same experiences in different ways. And just now they should not be afraid to speak about it, because it happened. I saw what I saw, and I'm not going to deny it. Thank you so much, Chuck. You're doing a great job. Thank you.
All right. Have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.
This concludes our October 2018 podcast. Sasquatch Syndicate will return on Thursday, November 1st. Thanks to all of our listeners, those who have been out to our website, and those following us on social media. Sasquatch is a controversial subject, so for all the believers and disbelievers, and those that will tell you they have all the answers, just remember, we're flying through space at 700 miles per hour. Buckle up.